Hi guys, I'm going to do a video today on how to ride a motorcycle for beginners. So I've got a lot of friends that want to ride motorcycles but they've never done it before, and I've kind of walked each of them through it, how to do it, taught them a little bit with my bike, and thought I'd do a YouTube video on how to do it because I don't really see too many that go into too much detail. So we're going to start off by just going around the motorcycle, looking at different parts, what each part does, how to get on the motorcycle, how to start it, all that kind of thing. This is going to be on a little bit older motorcycle. This is a 2005 Honda 1100, the Shadow Saber, and this is a carbureted engine. It's a little bit different with the newer bikes since those are fuel injected. There's a motorcycle right there. Yeah, he's cooking. But with these, when you have a carbureted engine, you do have to let it warm up a little bit. You have to choke it. If you try to just jump on and ride and the engine's not warm, it's going to just stall out on you. So let's start by looking at different components. First thing we see up here, of course, this is our speedometer. This one's pretty standard. Just shows us our speed, total miles traveled, and our tripometer. Also has an indicator for your oil level. It'll light up if your oil's low. Your engine temperature, that'll light up if your engine temperature is too high. You don't want your motorcycle to overheat, so if you do get a warning on that, pull over, let it cool off for a little bit. A lot of motorcycles are air cooled, and if you got an air cooled bike and you're just stop dead with the engine running, it's gonna overheat on you on a warm day. This one is actually liquid cooled. We can tell because we have a radiator here up front, along with a fan that kicks on here. I'm not sure how well you can see that. So these will do a little bit better at stops and in traffic. Okay. So now we know where our gauge is. Next thing we're going to look at is down here. We have a little light with an N on it, and these are usually green. I don't know if I've ever seen them any other color, but that's going to tell you when you're in neutral. And then here, this orange light with the arrows, that's going to tell us if we have a turn signal on or left or right turn signal. And then here, this blue one, that's telling us if our high beams are on and off. Okay? Moving up to the handlebars on the left here. This switch is for our high beams and low beams. This one is for our left turn signal and right turn signal. Press to cancel. And then down here is our horn. Okay? Pretty simple. On the right side, this is our engine kill switch. That shuts down the engine. That allows it to start up. This is our start button. Okay, so if we have our key in and we're in neutral, we can press start and start it. You can also do it with the clutch in if it's in gear. And then we have our throttle. So twist that, and that basically gives it more gas. So if you're equating it to when you're in a car, this is the same as hitting your gas pedal in your car, okay? Up here, this is your front brake, okay? You also have a rear brake, but just know this is your front brake. You don't want to go whole hog on your front brake and not use your rear brake, because that can cause you to lose control if you lock up your front brake. All right. Oh, one more thing I didn't mention over here is on this one, our choke is located up here. And your choke you'll be able to find because it's usually got a dash in it, a little forward slash with a circle in the middle, and then two lines on either side. You can see there's an arrow on this one telling us to activate the choke. We would pull it down. Okay. Some of the bikes you'll actually see your choke is located somewhere around here. It'll have the same signal, but to activate those, you'd pull those out. Okay. And then up here we also have our clutch, just like a clutch in a car. Yeah, so here's our clutch. So anytime we're shifting gears or we're coming to a stop while we're in gear, we need to hold this clutch in. Okay. Of course, also up here we have our side view mirrors, which are adjustable. So always want to make sure those are adjusted so you have a good sight so you can see all around you. All right, let's see. I guess the next thing would be to go into the side. We have a few controls down here. Now we see here, this is what's called a Petcock. And it's got 3 different positions. Now it's hard to see, but the top up here says RES. That's for reserve tank. Down here on the side, off. And on the bottom, on. Okay, so the way these work is it's just a little valve in there. It's opening and closing. If it's in the off, that cuts off fuel that's going down here to the hose, which feeds to our carburetor. So we want it off if the bike's not going to be used, otherwise we can flood the bike. All right. When we're ready to start the bike, we put it in the on position. Okay. If you run out of fuel in the on position, these do have a reserve tank, and basically they've just got the hoses that allow it to fill here. The first, on this particular bike, I think it's 2 gallons will work in the on position, and the remaining 1.5 gallon is for reserve. It's a nice little feature. That way, if you're not keeping track of how much fuel you have and you run out, okay, reserve will get you to a gas station. So I do recommend put it in the on position, not the reserve, unless you have to. Some bikes do have a fuel gauge. This one does not. And the fuel gauges on a lot of bikes don't really work that well anyway. All right. Down here, below the petcock, we have our ignition. And for this one, we have 2 positions, off and on. Sometimes one says ACC. That's for your accessories. I recommend just use the off and on unless you have to otherwise. Okay? All right. Let's see. And we have some foot controls. So this is our front peg. This is where our feet rest. And this is our shifter. Okay? So when we're ready to shift gears, this is what we're using. Operate the shifter. We pull in our clutch. And to go into first gear on most motorcycles, you're going to press down. And you want to go hard, and you'll feel and hear a click. Now it's in first gear. If you put your foot under it, okay, 1 full click up, that's in second gear. Click up, third gear. Click up, fourth gear. Click up, fifth gear. Neutral, you go all the way down to first and give it a half click. Oh, see, we just went to first. There we go. Now we're in neutral. On the other side, just next to our foot peg, is our rear brake. You want to have a good balance between your front brake and your rear brake. You don't just want to go full front brake or full rear brake. You want to kind of balance between the two. Alright, so I think we're ready to mount our motorcycle, but let's get it started and warmed up. So to start this motorcycle, we start by putting our key to the on position, and we're going to put our petcock to the on position. And we want to make sure the neutral light is on. It is. If it's not, find neutral. Okay, now we're going to turn our choke on by pulling it all the way down. And now we're going to hit our start button. Now the bike started. You step away a little bit. You can hear the bike is idling a little bit loud because the choke's on, so the choke is feeding it more fuel. After it's been started for a second, we can turn the choke halfway off. So it's not fully off right now, but it's a little more than halfway off. And we'll let that warm up. While that's warming up, I'm going to show you what a choke on a different style bike could look like. So this is a different bike here. And we can see this has a pull choke underneath the seat. So this one, you would pull it to activate the choke and then push in to turn it off. This also has a little bit of a different switch for the lights. So for your left turn signal, it pulls the left, press and it clicks to turn off. Right turn signal, go to the right, press turn off. And you do have other bikes like Harley Davidsons that have things in different positions, so you have to look for your start. It's not there on a Harley Davidson. This is your right turn signal. Then you have a left one here where the horn is. They have extra switches and buttons, so just kind of look for what's on yours. We can see here we have all the same lights but in a different position. So just look for the symbols: oil, turn signals, temperature, high beams, neutral. Those should be pretty universal. Now if you have a fuel injected bike, you shouldn't have to worry about warming up your bike like we are here. Okay? Oh, another thing I want to mention, we can probably turn off the choke now. There we go. Another thing to mention is make sure you have the proper safety equipment. So you can see here, we got a full face helmet with a face shield. Okay. It's very important because you will get debris flying up at you. You don't want it to hit you in the eye. This one has pretty good ventilation too, and it's pretty highly rated for safety. Also has emergency tabs, so if you are in an accident, the paramedics can take off your helmet without having to force it off your head. Safety gloves, very important to have. I recommend leather or something protective, so if you do go into a slide, you don't tear up your hands. And a protective jacket. This is Bull's leather here. They do have synthetic materials that work really well. You just want to make sure that you've got protective equipment on your jacket, covering your elbows and arms, covering your back and your chest. Okay, because that's usually what's going to impact if you fall off a bike. All right, so we're going to move our helmets so that it doesn't fall and crack. If these things fall more than about 3 feet, you need a new helmet. So to mount our bike, usually what you'll do when a bike is sitting, you want the handlebars turned toward your kickstand, and that's so that all the weight is focused this way and it doesn't fall over. Now I'm going to kick my leg over from this side because it's tilted this way and it's less likely the bike's going to tip. So I usually move the handlebars, swing my leg over, and now I'm seated on the bike. All right, let's see. And usually when I'm sitting, I like to sit in a position where my arms are underneath my shoulders. So if my arms are up higher than my shoulder, it's very uncomfortable. You're going to lose blood flow to your hands. Some guys like it, but for a new rider, it's not ideal. So if you have a bike where your arms are shoulder height or lower, that's perfect. And over here on the throttle, remember this is your gas, okay? So that, if you want to give it more gas, give it a twist, just like hitting the gas pedal on your car. All right, so I'm going to go over a couple of controls, how you'd operate the motorcycle. So again, we're going to use our turn signal, pressing left. Now our left turn signal's on, so if we're going to make a left turn, do that. Press to cancel. Now it's canceled. Right turn signal. And press to cancel. Over here, over here, if we want to give someone a little beep, go ahead and press the horn. And remember, this is our clutch here, so anytime we're stopping, before we start hitting the brakes, we're pressing in our clutch. Okay? Remember, we're going to press the clutch before we shift, so if I want to shift into first, okay, now we're in first gear. See the neutral light has gone off? I'm still holding the clutch because I'm not giving any gas and I'm not moving. Now I'm going to lift up lightly, half click, and now we're back in neutral and I can release the clutch. Okay. Again, your brakes. So if I'm moving forward and I hit that front brake, this is just going to stop. See? But you can do the same thing with your rear brake. And preferably your foot position when you're riding would be with the ball of your foot on the peg. And with this type bike, you'd have to move your foot a little bit to access the brake. You'll see a lot of guys that ride like this with the arch of their foot on the peg. And if you see someone doing that, chances are they've been riding a little bit longer. It's just more comfortable for them. And that's fine as long as they're doing it safely. But for a new rider, they do recommend keep the ball of your foot on that peg, okay? Same thing over here. Newer rider, ball of your foot on the peg. And one of the main reasons is because that way you have a little more balance when you're new, but also so you don't accidentally hit that shifter or hit that brake. Again, experienced riders, you're going to see them riding with the arch of their foot on that peg, and that's fine too, as long as you're safe while you're doing it. It's not a big deal. All right. Oh, I'm going to go grab a headband so I can talk while I move here. Okay, so I went out and grabbed myself a little head mount for the camera. Now I can talk hands-free because I'm going to need 2 hands for this next part. Now everyone that drives by is just going to think I'm mental. All right. So we're going to go a little bit into how to control the bike when you're actually out on the road. So when we're seated, we're going to want both hands firmly on the handlebars. You don't want to grip too hard, but you want a firm grip so you can control the bike. You just don't want it going out of control left or right. All right, so we're kind of balancing it. Most bikes are pretty darn well balanced as long as your tires are good and everything is strapped down properly. But if it's not, you can lose control at higher speeds, so just make sure you have a little bit of a control here. All right, so now I think we're ready to go over how to turn. So when you're getting ready for a turn, you got to think about how you want to make that turn, whether it's a right turn or a left turn. So you want to think, do I want to line myself on the left side of the road, the right side of the road, or the middle? For beginners, most of the time when you're making a right turn or a left turn, it's better to stay in the middle. Then you have a little bit of leeway to the right, a little bit of leeway to the right, a little bit of leeway to the left. Now there are different types of turns depending on your speed. So if you're going really low speeds, somewhere like 5 miles an hour, or 2 miles an hour, or even 7 miles an hour, you might be turning your wheel to actually turn. When you're going faster, you're very slightly turning that wheel, and it's more just the weight of the bike leaning and the weight of yourself leaning with the bike that's actually moving it. That's where counter steering comes in. So if I'm going at a higher speed, I'm going 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, I'm not actually turning to the right to make a right turn. What I'm doing is called counter steering. And if you watch my right hand, I'm just very lightly pushing on the right handlebar. So a little push out, and that will lean the bike, because when your tire is turning left at high speeds, it's actually leaning the bike to the right. That way you don't have to shift your entire body weight over to move that bike over. So just a little push on the right handlebar out, and your bike will lean and go left. Okay, so it'll lean and go left. Same thing if I'm making a left turn at higher speeds. If I push out just slightly, and I mean really it's about this much is what I'm doing when I'm making a 45-degree turn, and that bike is going to just go right over, and it's going to let you fall through the left turn. You can correct it a little bit if you have to partway through the turn, just by bringing it back in a little bit or pushing it out just a hair more. You want to make sure too, when you're making a turn, don't let off your throttle. Okay, you can a little bit if you have to in the beginning, but when you hit the apex of that turn, if you let off the throttle, the bike's going to lose momentum, and that may cause it to fall. What's keeping this bike upright, and you might say, well, how is it people make those sharp turns and they don't drop the bike? It's because your wheels are spinning, okay? And the wheels spinning are causing force going to the outside of the wheel, and that's going to want it to keep upright because of the momentum in there. It's actually quite a bit of weight and force keeping it upright. So if you've ever seen a spinning top and you try to knock it over, it's just not going to fall over because it's got that momentum on the outside of it that is keeping it from going over. Same thing, if you've ever seen a tire spinning down the road and you try to kick it and knock it over and it goes down, it comes back up. It's more like centrifugal force, really. All right, so now I think we're ready to start up the bike and take a little tiny ride just through the yard to show you what I'm doing at low speeds, and then we'll strap on the old helmet, we'll hit the roads, and you can see what it's like when you actually hit the road. Okay. Alright, so the bike has already been warmed up, so we don't have to worry about the choke right now. Want to make sure our gas is on. We want to make sure the key is in the on position. We want to make sure the bike is in neutral. Okay. Pull in the clutch if you're in gear. And if you are in gear, we're going to pull in the clutch and we're going to adjust it. So let's say we're in gear, we're in first gear. And we're going to lightly pull up with the clutch in until we see the green light on. So now that we're in neutral, gas is on, key is on, we're just going to press the start button. Again, we don't have to worry about the chokes, this bike's already warmed up. Okay, bike's on. Now, for the takeoff, so if we want to move forward, we're going to pull in this clutch, and we're going to pull it in all the way, unless you know exactly where the stopping point on your clutch is, but we're assuming that you haven't ridden before. We're going to pull in the clutch, hit the shifter down into first, and if we let out lightly on the clutch, we'll see the bike wants to crawl forward. Okay, now if we let out all the way on the clutch, the bike's going to die. So let's do that. I don't like doing that, but okay. There we go. And that's called stalling the bike, because we just let out on the clutch without giving it any gas. So let's go ahead and start it up. Oh, by the way, this is a good time to show you too. If the bike is in gear, like right now it's in first gear, if I hold down the clutch and hit the start, I can start the bike. But remember, it's in gear, so if I let out, and I'm going to let out real slow here, we can see it's going to creep the bike forward. Okay, so now that we kind of know how that works, let's start by how to actually take off. So when you're new, you're going to want to keep both feet planted while you take off. And as it starts moving, keep your feet near the ground, and then once you feel like the bike is going, you can move up to the pegs. So we're going to let out lightly, and then we're going to give it a little bit of gas. And then we're not even fully off the clutch yet, but now if we let out, there we go, the bike goes. The turn on slow speeds, I'm turning the handlebars. And we'll see higher speeds on the highway. So now I got to slow down, so I got to pull in the clutch and hold the brakes. There we go. So again, as I'm slowing down, first thing I do is I'm pulling in that clutch, and then I'm lightly hitting the brakes, the front and the rear brake. Okay. Let's do that one more time. So release the clutch, same time I'm giving it just about that much gas, so it's just a little bit. So release, 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 we're moving, feet go up, and let out the clutch, and we're good. Slow speed turn, we're turning the handlebars, and just a little bit of gas. Stop, pull in the clutch, and now our brakes, rear and front. As we come to a stop, we're putting I put my left foot down. For you, you may want to put both feet down as you're coming to the stop. Once you get used to it, you can just put your left foot down so that you can keep your right foot up on the brake and on your peg. That way when you go to take off later, you only have to lift one foot off, okay? Hopefully we've got all the basics down, and I think we're probably ready for the road. If I did forget anything, I'm really, really sorry, but you can ask me in the comments, I'll answer the best I can. So what I'm gonna do is put the GoPro on my helmet, get my protective gear on, and we'll hit the road. Okay guys, so now we got the protective gear on, and we are all ready to roll. One thing I did forget to mention is when to shift. So how do you know when to shift? Well, your motorcycle is going to get louder and louder and louder as you're riding, and it'll start to feel like you're not getting enough power or it's revving too high. It'll almost sound like a whining noise. So when it starts whining, instead of sounding like this, like right about there, that last part, that would be an indicator it's time to shift gears. So we know one down is first, and this bike, by the way, with a kickstand, if you go into first, it will shut it off. So one down is first, full click up, and you want to really kind of pull that sucker up all the way for second, and then from there, third, fourth, fifth. So I just want you guys to remember, one down, the rest are up. When it starts whining, shift up. If it starts bogging down, sounding too deep, and you start slowing down, downshift. Okay? All right. It's going to feel a little bit more natural when you do it. All right, let me flip this over, get you on my head. There we go. All right, now I don't know if you guys are going to be able to hear me out there on the road, but just watch what I'm doing. I'm going to go over the basics of how to make turns, how to stop, and it's going to be things we've already talked about, so just kind of watch me. There we go. Okay, now we're mounted up. And hopefully I got you guys in a position where you can see everything I'm doing. So I got my leathers on, zipped up, nice leather boots on, full-length pants, and protective leather gloves. Okay. Turn you in a little bit. There. Okay, so again, key on, fuel is on. It's currently in first, so I'm going to hold the clutch in, start. Okay, and we're ready to roll. All right, so downshift into first. We're going to release the clutch and give it just a bit of gas. Low speeds, so we're turning the handlebars. Okay. right turn signal, clutch is in because we stopped, remember, rear brake, front brake, and we're going to let out a little bit to creep forward. We're still turning the handlebars, okay? Once we start picking up speed, you'll see I start counter steering by pushing on the right or left. Okay, and here, you see I keep my foot up here, and my other foot's down, so when we start going, I don't have to put up my right foot, I've just got to put up my left foot. As you're stopping, you want to make sure you're shifting down, okay? Because if you try to take off from a stop and you're not in first gear, you're going to stall out. The whole time you're stopped, unless you're in neutral, keep that clutch in. If you're stopped on a slant, a hill, you either want to make sure you're holding that front brake or you're holding that rear brake, okay? Usually I go with the rear brake so that I have this hand free to wave at another biker or whatever I may need to do. And as soon as this goes green, we're going to go down a little bit of a wavy road to kind of show you how I'm steering with this. So I want you to watch my hands. You can listen to the bike. When it starts whining, you'll hear me shift, and then it stops whining. That's your shift point. I have no idea if you guys can hear anything I'm saying. I'm just kind of hoping. downshifting until you hit first. If you're not sure if you're in first, just keep downshifting. You can't, it's not going to hurt anything if you keep hitting first again and again and again. Okay, we're going to inch forward, so clutch in, and right turn signal. Now you got to be 5 times more aware of everything in a bike than in a car. So we're still in first gear, so we're going to turn that handlebars. Remember, slow speed turns, I'm turning the handlebar. High speed turns, I'm counter steering. Okay? Left turn signal, first gear, let out the clutch and give it a little bit of throttle. Okay? Steering with the handlebars, slow speed. Second gear. So hold in, release the gas, up one on your foot, turn again. Okay? again, when we're stopping, we're pulling our clutch, we're releasing on the throttle, we're hitting the front brake and the rear brake. We don't want to grab it, we want to just gently squeeze in. Okay, just like you're hitting the brake on your car. You don't stab at it, you gently push, right? And then when we take off, once again, we're going to slowly release the clutch and slowly lay on the throttle. We want to make sure we're in first gear every time we take off. So I don't know if you guys were able to hear me while we're out there on the road, but I was saying you have a right lane of travel, a left lane of travel, and a center within one lane. You can see the right lane is where his right tire is, the left lane is where his left tire is, and the center is where all the oil drips down. So the center can be very slick, the right can be dangerous because full of debris, so the left is the best way to travel. Most of the time. There are obviously exceptions. Okay, and that was kind of the basics out there. I'm not sure how much you were able to hear me. Hopefully you heard everything I said. But main thing we're taking away from this is we know all the controls, we know how to start the bike, we know how to use the choke, we know how to use the Petcock for the gas, we know how to use the brake, both the rear and the front. We know that there's the engine kill switch. If we want to stop the engine, we're hitting here, right? We know about our start button, we know about our horn, our turn signals, high beams, low beams, our mirrors, we know our ignition. So we know pretty much everything we need to know on here. We know how to use our shifter, and we know how to use our brakes. And if you guys couldn't hear me well out there, what I was saying is, when you're hearing it whine, we're shifting up. When we're hearing it bog down, we're shifting down. Okay, and we're always pulling in the clutch. Right? And I'm sure you saw me counter steering there at higher speeds. Just that little push was really zipping us right and zipping us left. Didn't take too much. And low speeds, didn't really have to turn that much. So I really hope this answered some of your questions. Gosh, I really hope I didn't forget anything. If I did, just let me know if you have a question in the comments, and I'll see if I can help you out with that.